Working agreements are a fantastic complementary practice that I think pretty much any team or professional should be using in their workplace. They can be used for a team that's long-standing working together. They can be used in larger organizations. They can even be used for just trainings or workshops or even shorter meetings. But what is a working agreement? It's a kind of social contract. It's a social contract that you've made explicit by putting it on paper or digitally on a website somewhere or an internal wiki. A social contract is an agreement between different people in a social setting, which could be work, which could be outside of work. An example of a social contract would be when you go to a friend or family member's house, do you keep your shoes on or do you take them off? Usually that's not on the wall and it's not said out loud or written down anywhere, but through conversations or interactions you've had, it's become clear that that's how you behave in that setting. And it's going to be different for different environments. A working agreement is exactly the same. And if you're operating in a larger business with multiple teams, there's a very good chance that there are multiple working agreements around with how those people like to work together. And it's a great way for you, if you're coming into the team, either as a stakeholder or someone joining the team, to understand how do they expect you to interact? How would they like you to work with them to maximize the value and enjoyment you get together? Now, what does a great working agreement look like? We know what it is, but what does it look like? Well, first of all, it should be visible. It should be clearly visible. If you're working in a physical environment, it should very much be on the wall somewhere where anyone can see it, ideally so they can see it as they are entering the team space. Loud and proud, sometimes next to the vision or the product goal, whatever it is they're trying to work towards achieving together. If it's in a digital setting, it should be very clearly visible next to the team's space. If you're using a digital tooling, it should be either on there, visible easily again, or a clear link that says this is where to find a working agreement and how to read it. That's number one, easily visible, very important. Otherwise, how will people know what it is and how to adhere to it? Another important part of it is make sure each item is distinct and understood by reading it on its own. What behaviors are we hoping to see? If we say, well, arguing, what about arguing? Do you want more of it, less of it? Do we want to handle it in a certain way? Make sure you're clear in the descriptions in your working agreement what it is you would like to see. Do you want more or less of it? Do you want it at all? How should we go about it? When should we go about it? And so on and so forth. So try and be precise in how you describe the things on your working agreement. Additionally, there's a few things you should make sure that you address on the working agreement. It's not exhaustive, but it's certainly helpful. One example would be, how will we actually coordinate our work efforts? How are we going to come together to do our work? How will we manage the flow of work throughout the day and throughout whatever iterative system we're using, being Scrum or Kanban, etc.? How will we deal with blockers and issues? How will we deal with conflict together? Do we come together? Do we let people do it one by one? Do we have a specific process by which we want to try and deal with conflict? How do we deal with collaboration and problem solving? Do we do it one-on-one? Do we make sure that we come together purposefully and specifically for certain problem solving? Do we make sure that whenever we're working on something, we never do it alone? We're always pair developing or reviewing our work with others. How do we deal with pressure? There's going to be pressure, both external and internal, with deadlines and issues and people having very high demands on when they would like something or what they would like it to look like. What do we do when the pressure's on, and how do we cope with that? And how should we act if someone violates our working agreement? And of course, very importantly, a working agreement, any social contract, is a living document. So how and when will we come together to make any changes to it as necessary? These are all good questions to start by answering for your working agreement and then continue building on it over time as you see fit. So what is the best example of a working agreement that I've seen? Well, it's hard to put a finger on as such, but the best one I had was probably when I was working up in Aberdeen with a fantastic heavy engineering team. And we iterated on it several times. Whenever someone joined or left the team, we reviewed it again to make sure it was still accurate, but we also made sure to hold each other to account about it. We used it in our retrospectives to see what practices and processes are we using to work together. And it has silly things like, we never have a pot of coffee on our own. Whenever someone's making coffee, we double check with everyone else would they like some as well. And it was a silly thing and it wasn't really important for the work, but it helped to foster a nice attitude of camaraderie and supportiveness for each other. We also spoke about when are the different events, who should be attending, how long is it for? And it allowed us to point to that when stakeholders came around to ask, hey, when is your next sprint review? I would love to attend. We could say, well, that is the time it is. And if you're going to attend, these are the general rules we like to abide by together to work better. And it was a wonderful working agreement. And in the beginning, the biggest problem we had was we didn't make it visible enough. It was on an obscure wall and no one really remembered to look at it. But over time, we made it more and more explicit, and we made it more and more a purposeful part of our practice. And through that, and holding each other accountable to it, it became a very impactful document for our practice. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Oscar with Pragmatic Shift. You can find more of our stuff under @Pragmatic Shift on all social media. I would love to be your Scrum Coach. And if you're interested in working with me, you can find my courses on pragmaticshift.com or about me as a coach under scrumcoach.uk. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us out and gives us further reach to get to more professionals to help them on their journeys as well. Thank you again for watching.